Although we are all thinking of the US, whose adult obesity rate crossed the 40% mark for the first time, standing at 42.4%, according to the State of Obesity, Better Policies for a Healthier America report. Although this rate continues to rise and is incredibly high, the US is not the most obese country in the world. This honor corresponds to a small country located in Oceania, whose name is Nauru. Nauru is a small island in the Pacific Ocean, only 21 square kilometers and just over 11,000 inhabitants. It is very far from any other terrestrial surface, so it has peculiarities that explain this change. Is it possible that practically the entire population of a country is overweight? If possible. On Nauru, almost 90% of adults are overweight and 60% are obese, with the rates being higher in women than in men. If you want to know more, let me tell you the story of Nauru, the small Pacific country with the highest prevalence of obesity in the world. Why? This photo are inhabitants of Nauru in 1914. This one of inhabitants in 1896. As can be seen, overweight did not exist in Nauru at that time. The third photo is of Nauru in the year 2019. What caused this change in just over a century? Nauru was annexed by Germany in 1888, who ruled it for almost 3 decades. In 1900, the Germans discovered that Nauru was very rich in phosphates, which are used as fertilizer for crops. In 1914, after the outbreak of the First World War, Nauru was captured by Australian troops and passed under British administration as part of the Commonwealth. The British also took over the exploitation of the phosphate mine, which they ceded to British, Australian and New Zealand companies. By 1964, Nauru had been so heavily exploited that it was thought to be uninhabitable by the 1990s, so a plan was drawn up to move the population to another island. However, the inhabitants rejected the proposal and demanded independence, which they obtained in 1968. With independence, they also took over the administration of the phosphate mine. The mining exploitation occupied practically the entire surface of the island, preventing the cultivation of vegetables. The only fertile areas on Nauru are in the narrow coastal belt where coconut palms flourish. In another small sector you can find bananas and pineapples. These vegetables, along with seafood and some roots, made up the traditional diet of the Nauruans. A very restrictive diet, as can be seen, to which the genetics of the Nauruans adapted over time. The rise and fall of a tiny country. The mining exploitation first and its transformation into a tax haven in the 90s, gave succulent benefits. Nauru became the second country in the world with the highest per capita income, after Saudi Arabia. Thus, Nauruans could afford to import food from other locations, especially Australia. These were ultra-processed foods, rich in fat and sugar, for which their bodies were not adapted. In fact, the most appreciated dish in Nauru is fried fish accompanied by Coca-Cola. In Nauru, they go crazy for anything that comes in a can of food. Anthropologist Amy McLennan of Oxford University, who spent 11 months living on Nauru, said she could rarely consume one vegetable a week. In fact, only about 8% of Nauru's food imports are fruit and vegetables, while 42% correspond to meat products, 7.3% to sweets and pastries, almost 6% to ultra-processed products and more than 15% to soft drinks. The economic situation has gotten much worse in Nauru since the G7 declared the country non-cooperative on tax matters in 2004, prompting many investors to pull out. Today, their unemployment rate is 90%. The country still maintains the welfare state established during boom times, but has virtually no domestic industry to support it, so it is heavily dependent on foreign aid from Australia. Consequently, the importation of cheap and unhealthy food has increased. What they are doing in Nauru to combat obesity. As a result of high obesity rates, Nauru has the highest rate of adult diabetes in the world. According to the International Diabetes Federation, 31% of islanders have diabetes and the rate skyrockets to 45% in the 55 to 64 age group. Consequently, life expectancy is only 67.8 years, although according to other sources it would be even lower. According to Amy McLennan, Nauruans understand the dangers of diabetes and obesity better than anyone because they see the consequences daily in the illnesses of their families and themselves. Limb amputations and blindness from diabetes are very common. Although attempts have been made to reduce obesity with different methods, such as nutritional education and the promotion of physical activity, the results are not effective. For example, they recommended walking around the perimeter of the airport, one of the few free areas on the island, which is 5 kilometers long. However, a short time later, they withdrew this proposal for security reasons. Thus, the Nauru government had to implement other regulations to reduce the consumption of unhealthy foods, such as the tax on sugary drinks. In 2007, a 30% tax was implemented on sugar, confectionery, soft drinks and other sugary products. At the same time, the tax on bottled water was abolished, to offset the impact of the sugar tax on household budgets. However, the final price of sugary drinks did not increase by 30%, but by 20%, due to the importation of cheaper Asian products. In short, the problem of obesity and associated pathologies in Nauru have a difficult solution, in a country with almost no economic resources and that is so dependent on imports. In these social and economic conditions, the islanders can do little. As long as unhealthy food continues to be imported, these people don't stand a chance.